front pages of our newspapers to the screens in front of you. Welcome to The Headliner. My name is Monica Chanda and I'm your host on this program, The Headliner, where we take you through some of those stories that trended during the week. So we delve into those particular trending stories, we get to unpack them, and we take you through the different segments with different studio guests. Well, do get to join me in the second segment. I will be joined by Mary Mundea from She Corresponds Africa. I will be looking at one of those stories. A German tourist went missing for 3 days and he was finally found. So we will be unpacking that particular story. And in the third and final segment, we have an in-house editor, and that's Fungai Jachi. She has her own take to the stories. But first and foremost, let's get into the headlines. And today on the Headliner, we unravel the grappling stories. Let's look at the Daily News. We do have the Daily News tagged on the 26th of October. It reads, do more to calm prices, government told, as RBZ unveils new measures to curb inflation. So that's one of the top stories that took center stage, looking at some of those inflationary pressures, but looking at the monetary side of things. Authorities have unveiled new policy steps meant to further stabilize the country's economy amid resurgent price hikes, as well as rising pressure on consumers. So economic experts, as they broadly welcome some of those new measures from the central government and a central bank, and of course encouraging the government to do even more to boost the Zimbabwe dollar. We also have the Financial Gazette tagged, industry pines for more tax progress, as business urged government to make additions, the tax adjustments in its 2024 budget. As you all know, traditionally November is where we do have the Honourable Minister of Finance getting to present his budget for the following year. So we should also be keeping you abreast of more on that. So to further improve the local operating environment, this also coming after the recent introduction of new tax and revenue management system. And the Zimbabwe Open for Business headline, the Herald in this week headlines put across the president hailing Zim-Sino ties. So Zimbabwe-China ties also coming center stage. And the head of state and government saying there has been growing diplomatic and economic engagement that's between Zimbabwe and China. And this over the past years, resulting in more companies from the Asian economic giant coming to make huge investments in the company. As you all know, the mantra Zimbabwe is open for business, and there has been quite a number of measures to make Zimbabwe a destination of choice and also favorable to investment. Already we know that the current Ministry of Finance, which is no longer just the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development, but also adding to it investment promotion. So the final story we should be having in the H Metro this Friday asked in its paper, why are the city thieves getting extremely bold? And this comes after a cop was nabbed for releasing a suspect without charge. Interesting. Now that's criminal behavior. And those are some of the few headlines that we have. So you need to stay tuned for more, because like I said, the second segment, we have our guests and we will be going through those stories. A very human interest story coming in the second segment. And join me with Mary Mundea from She Corresponds Africa. Hello and welcome back to the second segment. This is the program, The Headliner. And in this segment, we are joined by Mary Mundea. She's a journalist from the publication She Corresponds Africa. Thank you for joining us today on The Headliner.
Thank you for having me, Monica. It's great to be here.
Well, we are going to be looking at a particular story that made the headlines. And I can almost imagine, what would you do if you were lost in some game park for 3 days?
And this is not just some game park. This is a game park where we have lions, we have buffaloes, we have elephants. I think I would be frozen to death because I wouldn't know what would happen to me in the next second or so. It's a terrifying experience, one that I don't wish to ever experience in my life.
Okay, so let's get the viewers to have an appreciation of the story we're going to be unpacking. So Andreas Holberg I hope I pronounced that correctly. So he's a German tourist, and he went missing for 3 days, only to be rescued and lost in Matusadona. And just to imagine being rescued after 3 days. So let's talk about how the media covered it, because it was reported in the H Metro and Independent UK.
I think the media did a superb job, because under normal circumstances we wouldn't have gotten to know about it. In this case, we got to have an appreciation of who the tourist is, as much as we didn't have their age. We got a better understanding in regards to what he had come here to do, what it is that he had been doing before the predicament of getting lost or not being found somewhere befell him. And we also got an appreciation of the rescue efforts that were put in place by the Zimbabwe Parks and Wildlife rescue team. And we also got a better understanding in regards to what transpired until the time that he was found. And I believe that it was a wholesome story, brilliant coverage.
I love how you put it across, wholesome, you said. And given the media and how it covered it, the H Metro, the Independent United Kingdom, it's essentially important to have an appreciation of the processes that took place when you're looking at a rescue mission, because this is a German tourist lost for 3 days. You go missing for 3 days. It's more like your survivor edition of sorts. So let's talk about the rescue mission. How do you think that process was actually covered?
I loved how they articulated the rescue mission. We got an understanding that the Zimbabwe Parks and Wildlife deployed helicopters, they deployed numerous vehicles, sniffer dog, among other means of trying to find the lost tourist. And the good thing about it as well, apart from what I mentioned, was that we also got an understanding of what it is that had happened to him. His car had developed a mechanical fault, and it was a great thing that after all the effort from the Zimbabwe Parks and Wildlife Authority, he was found in good health 3 days later.
Does it also speak to how having stories like this, because we know we often have human-wildlife conflict happening, and then you have a tourist going missing in a game park, which is one of the biggest game parks if we are to look at it, and the media jumping on it. Does it also speak to how the media is also trying to raise awareness around some of these human-wildlife conflict issues, and also just trying to raise awareness in terms of when you're a tourist, or even when you are in part of those neighboring communities where they are game parks, you need to be alert and be, you need to also have an appreciation of what to do and what not to do?
Yes, I think it's a great initiative. It's a great effort that we got from the media, as far as, jumping on such kind of a story and making sure that we have a better understanding that somebody's missing in the first place, and also get a wholesome approach, a wholesome understanding of what transpired from the point they got missing to the point they were found. And I believe that this goes a long way, not only in making us locals understand some of the predicaments as far as human-wildlife conflict is concerned, but also have a better appreciation to our tourists, so that they know, like what you rightfully said, that if they wake up and find themselves in such a predicament, how do they go about it in such a scenario? And the good thing about it, like what we got from the story, is that the tourist, when he saw that things were bad, he stayed in his car. It might have been uncomfortable, but I believe that it went to a greater extent, to secure and save his life, especially when you're in a national park whereby you have your elephants and your lions.
But often, more than not, we have different coverage of story pieces, and sometimes we could have them one off, and we never seem to have a developing piece from a story, for instance, like in this nature of circumstances. What would you like to see the media do in terms of, now that we've seen Andreas Hochberg has been rescued, and it is one of those instances where missing for 3 days. Should we be seeing the media also making sure that we have developing stories from that, follow-ups to that, and maybe have other different kinds of pieces of writing from this story?
Yes, I believe that's of utmost importance, because if we're really to take a look at it, we only got to understand and have a better appreciation of what had transpired after he had been found, which is different from maybe the point that he had gotten missing. And I understand that maybe that would have raised alarm and made people to be anxious, worse off, maybe we have somebody who was planning to come to Zimbabwe, enjoy our nature and all the beautiful fauna and flora that we have. But at the same time, I believe that the moment we have such stories developing, and we also have the bitter end, or in this case, the better end, in which somebody would have been found, we do a follow-up, he shares his experience and whatnot, I believe that is of utmost importance, and it provides an insight, not only to us as Zimbabweans, but to other tourists whom we heavily rely on as far as our tourism industry is concerned, to have a better appreciation of what to do, what not to do if they by any chance to wake up and be in the same predicament he was in. So I believe that when it comes to such, we can do more.
And in terms of doing more, would you say we have the other end of media? Because we do have magazines, we also have that side of media that cover tourism, that cover the other recreation side of things. What would we say should we be saying, you know, as a public, and even as media fraternity? What should we be saying in terms of also having a deliberate approach in having some of those aspects of human-wildlife conflict, the do's and don'ts, and also having an appreciation of the number of nature reserves or the wildlife parks or the conservation areas that we have in Zimbabwe?
One thing that I would like to appreciate is the extensive coverage as far as, you know, putting out the tourism resorts that we have, among other things. At the same time, I believe that the missing link in this case is maybe having an article on how to survive in a so-and-so environment, how best to navigate. In whatever environment you're in, as far as the tourism destinations are concerned, I believe that if you have the to-do and not to-do lists, light-hearted, beautiful, simple, straight to the point, we can complement the beautiful coverage that we're putting out as far as our tourism destinations are concerned. So we need that bit.
I love how you also are articulating it, because, you know, light-hearted. I know sometimes we can be so obsessed with some of the very hard news.
Yes, hard-hitting.
Hard-hitting. But in as much as this can be a hard-hitting story because it speaks to tourism, and tourism plays a very big role in terms of, you know, the gross domestic product of Zimbabwe. Let me deliberately bring you to the aspect of this week. We had a lot of events lined up. There was a lot of preparation as we counted down to the 25th October Anti-Sanctions Day commemorations. And while Zimbabwe is under those illegal sanctions, there have been sort of impacts, a lot of negative impacts that have hit hard on Zimbabwe in terms of economically, and also trickling down if we are to look at tourism. Now, with a piece such as this, where we are saying at the end of the day, it's a feel-good story in terms of the rescue that came to it. It also speaks much to say Zimbabwe is a destination of choice. It's it has certain elements in place, so you can feel secure. Speaking to that, as the media, and even while we are speaking of some of the negative issues that are aligned to sanctions, what should the media be doing? What should we be deliberately be doing in terms of media? And I know for the better part of it, there should be a sort of proactive approach to how the media should be branding Zimbabwe and putting Zimbabwe in a good light. This particular piece, in terms of Visit Zimbabwe.
Like what you rightfully said, it's a feel-good piece just because we ended up having somebody rescued. But I believe that as the media, it's important that we complement the efforts that are being put in place by the government, by His Excellency, among other relevant authorities, to make sure that we also do our part and we market Zimbabwe properly. At the same time, whilst we're putting out that we're saying we have the Caribbean, we have the Eastern Highlands, we have this, we have that. Let's be innovative in how we come up with stories, how we package them, so that we make them wholesome, like what I rightfully said in my previous statement, that here are maybe one or two things to expect when you visit the Victoria Falls. Pinpoint those little things in good light so that our tourists prepare accordingly, and if anything wrong is to happen, they know what to do and what not to do. I believe that we need to complement that bit.
On the other lighter side of things, let's talk about, this was a print. This was a story that was covered quite extensively in print in terms of, like we said, we had our local publication, and then we had international publications covering it. And this is the print side of things. Looking at the media electronically, you know, you're looking at broadcast TV, and you're looking at online. Do you think we could actually take advantage of having even other media houses jumping on this and even coming up with reality shows?
Yes, that would be great. Even bloggers and your socialites, among other things, because let's say he's comfortable talking about his experience and stuff like that. That's where visuals come in. You know, we have bloggers that focus on video and stuff like that. We have online media who focus on vidcasts, among other things. We rope them in. They talk about their experience. We can actually reach out to the Zimbabwe Parks and Wildlife Authority, you know, to have pointers. This is how you do it. This is what to do and what not to do, and we complement the efforts of you know, putting out our beautiful tourism industry out there.
You never know, we might just have a Survivor edition, Zimbabwe edition, if we put it that way, and Mary might just be in it as one of the media contestants.
I don't wish to, because I'm terrified of animals, but all the same, I would rather watch from a distance. Maybe behind the camera, I don't know.
You don't know. Yeah. Mary Mundea and She Correspond Africa joining us in the second segment, and we were taking a look at that story piece that was covered in the H Metro and Independent UK. It was the German tourist Andreas Hofberg, and he went missing only to be found after 3 days, but all is well. It did end well. And so we are continuing to urge you, if you are going to be a tourist, domestic or international, just make sure you also have an appreciation of the do's and don'ts. But again, don't go anywhere. This is the headliner. The program is the headliner. Welcome to the third and final segment. And this is the segment we call the Editor's Choice. And we have our in-house editor for this week, Fungai Jachi. Welcome to the headliner.
Thank you so much for having me, Monica.
And as always, the editor has certain stories that took the attention. And for this week, let's take a cue from which story was top on your agenda.
I actually have two stories. Well, there's the first one, which is of a former top model, Mercy Mshaninga, who was actually ordered to perform 350 hours of community service following her conviction of fraud. And the second one is of a 15-year-old boy who came to court on charges of murder.
Very emotional, intimate, for lack of a better word. Let's start with the first story, the former model and, of course, community service. And seeing that she is a woman who has been quite promotional in terms of the industry itself, what does this speak to how even the media carried it out? Because I know sometimes there is a tendency to say the media can be biased in how they cover certain stories, especially when they are certain influential persons or very popular persons.
Well, I believe we did a good job. I think that we gave it our all in terms of covering the story, because when she first came to court, we actually kept on giving people updates on her case. It went for a full trial, and then we were always giving people updates of what was happening in court. Remember, she was being charged with fraud after she lied to models that she could organize a gig for them in Dubai. And apparently they paid varying amounts, and unfortunately on the day of traveling, they realized that, well, their money had been misused as there was no gig in Dubai. And, well, they had to obviously report to the police, and the law enforcement agents, of course, did their job. And she came to answer for her crimes before the courts. You realize that, of course, each case is treated differently. And we try to inform the public, because court matters are usually complex and people don't understand. Because some were saying that, how come she got community service when my TT got a custodial sentence?
That comparison.
Yes, exactly. So people are always comparing cases. Well, of course, they are both fraud cases, but the circumstances were different. And Mshaninga actually got community service because she showed remorse. That's what the magistrate said when she was giving her ruling, that she showed remorse, and therefore she did not deserve to be punished twice. And also she wanted to be given an opportunity to pay back the complainants.
Now, while the media is not encouraged to take any sides, and we're supposed to be very impartial in how we carry out these stories, now these also are human interest, and I know sometimes they can be sensationalist to a certain extent, especially when we're looking at popular figures, and they could we could probably put out headlines just for the sake of getting people to buy that paper. But fraud is a very serious case.
It is.
And in as much as you said the media covered it, you believe they covered it well. But covering it well could be subjective, because this is fraud. This is fraud, Fungai. And we're thinking, should we not have also taken an approach to understand even the circumstances of, for instance, Mercy's case in this instance? Should we not have delved deeper to really understand even from those victims of this particular case as well?
I think now that the case is over, we can actually do that. Because what happens with court cases, as long as they are still before the courts, we can't do anything about them. We can't analyze them. We can't do anything. We have to wait for them to be finalized. And now that Mercy's case has been finalized, maybe we can actually get a chance to talk to her and hear her side of the story, why she did it. And if she is indeed remorseful, then maybe she can have one or two words for other influential people. And also maybe we can now also talk to the complainants so that they give us their side of the story and what they have learned from the experience that they got from Mercy.
But then that experience, it's also debatable, because the media is also being accused of popularizing some of these people, because it's one thing to commit a crime, and then suddenly, despite committing the crime, it's almost like we make them even more popular in how we carry out these stories and the time that we give them, especially when it comes to these serious crimes. What would you like to probably say in terms of how you are being accused as media of even escalating their popularity?
Well, that's quite a tricky question, Monica. Because, hey, okay. So there is the business side. We have to sell the paper, or we have to have more views. But then sometimes it's not really our fault. Because, seriously, though, because you know what? If Monica comes to court, it's actually different from someone we do not know. It's not like we are actually popularizing you, but the moment that we mention that it's Monica Chanda who is coming to court, she is accused of whatnot, everyone is now interested in that matter. Unlike when we just say, I don't know, Peter Moyo, who is not known, is coming to court. People won't be that interested. So now, because there is social media, the moment that we just post that Monica Chanda is coming to court, now everyone would be keen to know. And obviously our views will go up. It's not like we do that intentionally, but it's what will be newsworthy. And like, sorry to say this, but there are some people who are just more newsworthy than others.
Newsworthy is the word. Now let's look at the 15-year-old. A very, how do we even handle this particular story? Because this is a 15-year-old, and murder is the case.
Yeah, indeed. So first things first, being a minor, we don't even mention his name. We don't even mention where he stays, his parents, or the people whom he committed the offense with. Because with this boy, he had two accomplices. Of course, they're 18-year-old, but then we did not even mention the accomplices. Why? Because we're trying to protect the minor. In as much as he is alleged to have committed a third schedule offense, which is a very serious offense, we still have to protect the minor.
But then for the benefit of the viewer, because there may be some of our viewers who are just joining us on the headliner right now, and they're trying to have get to understand what are we actually talking about here. Maybe walk us through this particular story of the 15-year-old. What is said to have transpired? How was it reported?
Okay, so what is alleged to have transpired is that the brief circumstances that the police gave us were that this boy and his two accomplices, they were chasing after a man. For what reason, we do not know. And then it is said that this man went to someone else's house trying to seek refuge. And then the owner of that house came out trying to protect this man and trying to refrain these kids from attacking this man. And then unfortunately, they then stabbed the guy in trying to help the person who had come to seek refuge at his house. So that is what is alleged to have transpired. Apparently, when the boy was now in the dock, the police were opposing bail because at law, this 15-year-old should be given free bail and then released into the custody of his parent or guardian. So when all this was happening, the dad of the 15-year-old boy disowned his child in court. He said that this child is terrorizing the community that we stay in, and I can't take him home.
Very unfortunate circumstances, but it's also unfortunate because murder in question, and that's a very serious crime, and how that crime came out to be very gruesome. Let's look at, in terms of, because it's probably between a rock and a hard place, reporting on this particular story, because like you said, rightfully put, this is a minor who is involved in this gruesome crime. And we know that for most of the part, as a media, we are supposed to protect, but we also are supposed to bring out issues of children's rights. Because in this case, he's still a child. And how do you see this unfolding? How the media will look at this particular case, where they may be forced to look at children's rights, then the issues of juvenile delinquency, then looking at the gruesome act itself, because it is a crime, and looking at how the system will be handling this particular case?
Like I said before, Monica, at law, this child should be released into the custody of his parent or guardian. But in this case, the responsible authority, who is the father, he said he can't. So the court was forced to send this child to remand prison, because the reason why children are not sent to remand prison is because they do not want them to be associated with hardened criminals they will find there. And also, it also brings up the issue that maybe we do not have proper facilities for juvenile offenders in the country. And that is something that the authorities should actually look at and act. Because a child is a child, like you said. But then when a child is now a criminal, then there is that difference. He is no longer the same child that we used to know, like an innocent child. That child has become a criminal. But then there has to be proper places for those children so that they grow up to be better adults than just keeping them in prisons with older criminals. It is not the right place for them. So I think it's an issue that authorities should really look at and quickly, so that they are proper places for child offenders.
And maybe finally, how difficult is it for the media, for journalists to cover stories of this nature, especially when they involve children and the crimes are very serious? Is it even easy not to put your emotions into covering a story or writing on a story like this?
Well, being human, obviously you have that heart that is telling you that, but why? How did this even happen? Then you start to question a lot of things. The home that the child was brought up in, the parents of that child, and the environment that that child is being brought up in, and all. A lot of questions come to mind. But then at the end of the day, we're just supposed to do our job. We just share with the nation what will be happening in the courts.
Well, on that very somber note, a very tragic note, and those two stories that we had covered in the third and final segment, which we call the editor's choice. And we had our in-house editor, Fungai Jachi, just walking us through her two stories of the week. One of the former model, and it was involving fraud, and the second one involving a minor, and this is a murder case. Well, Fungai, it has been great having you in studio, and we look forward to more stories from you.
Obviously, I'll be back.
Well, you definitely will be back. And to our viewers, we certainly hope that you were glued to your seat, or if you were multitasking or the same, we always look forward to your viewership right here on The Headliner, and continue to delve deep into those stories that took center stage during the course of the week. From those top headlines to that story of the German tourist, and now to the in-house editor's pieces. Well, it has been The Headliner. My name is Monica Chanda. Until next time, and from our crew behind, it's pleasant viewing.